Hi, everyone. This is the Perspective with Viv podcast. My name is Viv, and welcome to the show. Today's title is The Art of Being Overperforming with Angie Hawkins. Angie Hawkins is a self-love coach, speaker, and the author of Running in Slippers, a raw and courageous memoir about shedding social masks and reclaiming joy through vulnerability. After surviving a suicide attempt that cracked her wide open, Angie chose the path of radical truth, self-love, and healing. Today, she helps women stop people-pleasing, set guilt-free boundaries, and reconnect with their inner light. Through through her program, Shine from the Inside, she empowers others to live authentically and love themselves fiercely. Hi, Angie. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Viv. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure, and I'm ready to dive right into the questions. Are you ready?
Yes, let's go.
Okay. Angie, can you take us back to the moment everything cracked open? What was happening in your life before your breakthrough into radical self love?
So, my trauma started when I was a young child, which I think that's the case for a lot of people. I grew up in a household, and this is not to criticize my parents, I'm just stating facts, but there was a lot of emotional neglect in my family because my parents were focused on putting a roof over our heads because I have a sister. So putting a roof over our heads, making sure we went to school, like the basic life necessities, but we were not. Also, I'm a Gen X, so I grew up in the 80s and 90s. So parenting was a lot different back then as well. But my parents, they weren't all lovey dovey. So I just felt a lot of emotional neglect, which as a child, I wouldn't have described it that way. I just felt that I didn't deserve to be loved. And that was the internal belief that followed me through life. And so, as I'm sure many of our listeners are aware, your internal beliefs dictate how you navigate the world and what you attract into your life. So, I attracted basically a lot of self sabotage. I self harmed for many years through over exercising and under eating. And upon reflection, I think it was a way of because I didn't love myself, I was basically just physically reflecting that back to myself. I also overgave to people who didn't respect me. I overgave to external validation because I thought external validation is what proved my worth. And so I lived, because I'm 45 now, so I lived 40 years of my life this way. And as I'm sure you can figure out, it didn't work very well for me. I just basically had toxic situations, whether that be jobs, romantic relationships, friendships, but I always felt that there was something wrong with me. However, it was just this internal belief that was dictating everything. But anyway, I went through this stretch because in 2017, my dad passed away and I was plummeted into profound grief. And I did actually take the time to self reflect because I was in just a really dark period of my life. And I decided, I was living in Chicago at the time. I decided to move to Chicago, from Chicago to Hawaii, where I live now, which it was well intentioned because I was trying to be happier and make a better life for myself. But the problem was I was still reaching for things outside of myself to make myself happy. And then once I got here, there was just a string of events. Like there were management changes at work that threatened my job. My condo flooded. It was just like one thing after another for like 2.5 years. And I was dealing with all of this with that mindset of I don't deserve to be loved. Everything's a struggle, all of the things. And so in 2020, I had a total emotional breakdown and I tried to end my own life. And obviously, I'm still here, so I survived. But in that lesson, I realized that I had a purpose and I was determined to figure out what that was. And through my own healing journey, I ended up writing my book, which is it's a memoir about that really train wreck period of my life. And it's super vulnerable. And the reason I wrote it that way is because we all go through shitty things in life, but we're not talking about it. We hide behind our curated social media feeds, or even in real life, we wear our happy faces and pretend everything's fine. But life is really hard and we shouldn't have to go through our struggles alone. So I wrote the book to help people not feel so alone. And I also started my Inner Glow coaching business because I help women transform from people pleasing and seeking that external validation to having that radiant confidence and internal happiness that you get within yourself. And then anything outside would just be enhancing that.
Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us, especially because now you've been able to turn what was pain into purpose and you're helping other women as well. I love that. And I'm happy that you've been able to shift to this place where you have beliefs that are more positive and therefore reflect in your life as well. And it's
And it
never,
took the shift of like the internal belief, like that's what changes. And then your entire
Mhm.
life changes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a perfect message to start the episode with. Now, you said that your healing began after choosing truth over performance. What did that shift look like for you in real life, not just in theory?
So I used to perform and achieve and give to things outside of myself because I thought having the job, having the paycheck, having certain friends or certain connections, I thought that's what led to happiness and fulfillment. But again, going through my own healing journey, I realized that the happiness and fulfillment is within you. Like we're all born with this light inside of us, and because, little kids, they run around screaming and yelling and they don't care what anybody thinks. So, but as we go along life, society tells us we need to be a certain way, or our family tells us we need to be a certain way. And that light gets dimmed, and that's when you can become like how I was and like start giving to these external things because you're trying to fulfill society standards or your family standards, and it's not fulfilling. Like I had a corporate America job, I made decent money, I had good benefits, but I was so miserable and unfulfilled because it wasn't who I was. It was just so misaligned with like the truth of my soul. So what I had to learn was, you know if be who I am, and then everything else will fall into place. But that comes with the change of the internal belief, because I now believe that I deserve to be loved. So now I act in those ways, which, by the way, life goes way better for me now than it did before. Because when I was listening to the belief that I didn't deserve to be loved, I didn't listen to my intuition, which that's a huge part of my personal life and my coaching, is listening to my intuition. Yeah, life is just a lot easier than it used to be.
I'm so glad to hear that, especially about listening to intuition. I think it's one of the core things that we should be taught when we're growing up, because when we're younger, like you said, as kids, we have a light inside of us. We're also very receptive to things and know things without having to ask. In that moment, if we as parents or guardians see them, we should just continue to teach that they should hold on to those feelings, trusting those feelings and acting on them. And it can just change how society develops, honestly. So I'm so
Agree.
glad, you're right. I'm so glad that at least one thing about the healing journey is that even if you lose that connection to your intuition for a while, when you get it back, things just drastically change in a way that you never see coming. And I don't think it's ever too late to start living life aligned with who you truly are. So thank you for sharing
Agree.
that.
Yeah, because I wasn't 40 until I started my true journey.
Hmm. I love that. Yeah, and age is just a number anyway. Yeah, it's all about the spirit.
Agree. Actually, I think of ages at when I started this when I turned 40, because everyone, there's like a negative connotation with growing older. So when you think of age, it sounds worse to have a higher number. So I look at age as levels, because when you're playing a game and you reach the next level, it's actually a good thing, right?
Yes, I
And
love
ho
that.
and honestly, this is not my own original idea, by the way. I can't remember where I got this from, but I've been using that ever since I was 40, and I love it because it's like, yeah, I'm growing and learning, so now I'm reaching the next level.
Yes, I really love that. I think I'm going to start using that as well. Thank you for sharing that. And you know, the beautiful thing about age, I'll speak about age from my perspective. I'm in my early 30s, right? And while in my 20s, I lived life, trial and error, all of that. But entering my 30s, I was like, this is the real 20s. Like, it's not about the number, but this is how it truly feels to be, how I expected to be in my 20s, if that makes sense. And when I think
No,
about, yeah,
like, 'cause are you talking about, like, actually, like, dealing with life experiences? That's exactly how I felt, like, my 20s felt like a breeze, and then I got into my 30s, and that's when, like, life really started happening to me.
Interesting.
So is that what you're talking about?
I feel like for me, I'm speaking about how in my 20s, I still didn't feel fully developed. Like, my
Mm,
frontal lobe and who I was as a person. Like, you know how even like certain cultures, like our culture, ideally they want you to be married at like 26, 27. I always
yeah,
say that if I got married at that time, like it wouldn't last. The marriage wouldn't last because I was such a kid. I was so young. And even at 28, having my Saturn return, I was like, wow, you think I would have grown, but I'm still learning. But in my 30s, it's now like, okay, all those lessons that you learned, now you're using it, you're acting on it.
mm,
This is life. This is it now. This is the real level. This is the real adulting, you know? So that's why for me, I always think that your 20s are for me are an extension of you being a teenager, not because we're talking numbers, but talking in terms of like experience or the vibe check or the energy around that demographic. So when I've seen women in their 40s, because I'm looking forward to my 40s. I feel like women in their 40s, first of all, there's freedom, the liberation, right? I
yes,
don't give a fuck. It's like you're not caring. I don't give a damn. What do you guys
yeah,
think about me? What's my business? You know? I love that because I think that, like you said, is levels. So is that level of having extra benefits in terms of leeway and space to be yourself because nobody's going to come up and tell you anything.
yeah. Well, going back to I'll comment on that, but going back to your earlier comment on, like, not being fully developed, I don't think, and I may be misquoting something that I've heard, and what I heard may not have even been a credible source, but I don't think it is fully developed until you're like 26 or 27. And it could be credible because I remember I was like listening to a podcast or something, and the guy was talking about how he joined the military when he was 18, and then he was in the military for a long time. But anyway, his point was because his brain wasn't fully developed, and then he went straight into the military, which is very like regimented, and you don't have to think for yourself. They're basically telling you what to do. So when he got out of the military, he had a lot of issues with like living life because he like his prefrontal lobe had never fully developed because between, you know, it happening so late in life, plus he was in the military at that time, so he never had to think for himself. But anyway, my point is I don't think it does fully develop to your late 20s. And also the women that you see in their 40s, I think it's because I don't know. Some people are just naturally like confident and don't care. But then there's people like me. Like I had to go through some shit and then go through my healing journey. And now I'm on the other side of like, I really don't care what people think.
I love that. I love that because eventually you do get there, right? You're saying that everyone has a different journey. Some people show up
Yeah,
naturally. Yes, I get that
correct.
for sure. I feel like from my perspective, because I'm kind of like a wild one, I think I think it's a very general term to use. If I could be more nuanced, I'll say I'm very free spirited in a very restricted environment. So, or it's less restrictive now, but what I'm trying to say is that I just always felt like 40 be like that portal into, oh my gosh, you're grown. Nobody can talk to you anyhow and you can't take people's shits. Yes. And like in a culture where you're young, your voices doesn't matter. That's at that age or from that demographic, if you're not married, if let's say you're married, people will start to listen to you more. But if you're not that older in that sense, people will be like, nah, that's
Yeah.
what it's like for me in society.
Yeah. And also, like, the whole marriage stigma, I think, is going away because I've never been married. And I feel like in my 30s, everyone would be like, "Why aren't you married? When are you gonna get married? Blah, blah, blah." And I like never get that anymore. I can't even
Mm,
remember the last time
I
someone
love
has
that.
commented on
Yeah.
that. So it's nice. At least society is becoming more open minded in certain ways.
I totally agree. I totally agree, especially with the marriage part, because I love seeing content on marriage and, I love seeing marriage content, but I also love seeing women be like, okay, we've dissented marriage, let's focus on our lives. If it happens, it happens. It's not the main thing. I like that because it just feels like we're shifting and we're not denouncing the system or the institution, but we're just like, there's something else that we can explore here, you know?
Yeah, and I think that a lot of times, I'm not like speaking for everyone. I think a lot of times not wanting to get married comes from a healthy place. Like, because for instance, I used to be the kind of person I couldn't stand being alone, and because I needed that external validation and, all of the things that are dysfunctional about that mindset. Whereas now it's like I'd rather be alone than be with the wrong person. And I think, like, the demographic that you're referring to, I think a lot of them, that is their mindset. So it's actually coming from a
Yes.
very healthy place.
I totally agree. So let's talk about motherhood. Many women struggle with the mother wound, that deep unspoken ache. How did it show up for you, and how did you begin the healing process?
I think how it showed up for me is honestly, because that was my core wound for most of my life, and a big part of it was my mom was extremely critical of me, so that developed my own critical inner voice, which plagued me, like, even to this day it does. It's not as strong as it was before, though. So I would always be so critical of myself, and honestly, I think that's where the self-loathing came from as well. So my healing in that is all wrapped up in my journey to self love, because I was able to give myself the compassion that my mom never did, or I was able to love myself in a way that my mom never did. And again, it's not to criticize her, it's just to acknowledge that's how she is. And this is what I need to do to move forward with my life.
Totally get you. Thank you for sharing that. How does the mother wound tie into self abandonment and the need to perform for love or approval?
I think for me, it was just the fact, because again, I felt emotionally neglected by my mother. And again, I wouldn't have described it as that at that time. But in hindsight, I realized that that's what it was. And I think for me, that's how it manifested into eating disorders. Because when I was a senior in high school, I starved myself to 85 pounds. And I think it was the whole, like, restricting, because love was restricted. I was like restricting food, because love and food are both nourishing, right? So I think somehow psychologically those things are connected. That's just my theory. So because I was starved for love, I was literally starving myself to match my internal world with my external world. And while my eating disorders never really got that bad again, it was always the self punishment through under eating and over exercising, because I never felt good enough for my mom. So by doing that to myself, I was never good enough for myself. So I think it was just my way of reflecting my relationship with my mother.
Wow. What would you say to someone who feels that acknowledging their mother wound feels like a betrayal?
That's a good point. So, it all relates to your journey within yourself, right? Because I had to learn self-compassion, and in doing that, I also had to learn compassion for my mother, because she is how she is because of how she was raised and her life experiences. And some people, and I don't really know the psychology behind it, because you hear studies of like twins who have alcoholic parents, and one will become an alcoholic and one doesn't. And I think it's the classic case of you either abide by your family systems or you decide that you're not doing any anymore and break away. So she chose the path of abiding to the family system, and right or wrong, that's just how it was. And I have to have compassion for that, because I can see why she is the way she is, and whether I agree with it or not isn't really relevant.
Well, thank you for sharing that. How can one begin to heal their mother wounds internally?
The best way you can do it is to love yourself, because again,
Hmm.
if I'm loving myself, and I know this sounds so cliche and I didn't really understand it until I did it, but you can't really, because people who are miserable in their own lives, they project that out onto other people. It's the same thing with self-love, because if you love yourself and you're compassionate with yourself and you trust yourself, you're able to see other people through the same lens. And just to be clear, that doesn't mean you have to interact with them if that's unhealthy for you. Because, for example, I haven't spoken to my mom in almost 3 years because it wasn't an emotionally healthy interaction for me. And I told her basically, I have some more healing to do before I can talk to you again. and that's what I'm working on. So, healing it doesn't even necessarily mean engaging with it either. It means doing whatever you need to work on yourself,
Yeah.
and and it never has anything to do with the other person, because for a long time I was angry at her or I wanted her to change, but the thing is, it has nothing to do with her and it has everything to do with me. I think it would have to, like, have everything to do with her if she was intentionally being a certain way toward me, but that's just how she is, and I need to get to a place in my own growth where I can interact with that and not take it personally.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. So powerful in so many ways. I think one of the things that a lot of women do experience is the mother wouldn't, because their mothers, some people have their mothers as their first bullies. And then you have other people that have their mothers as just an absent figure, but there
Mhm.
physically. So that nurturing, they lack it. And as a woman, it's your core. I mean, it's the part of the foundation of your identity, how you are loved by your mother, how you are nurtured by your
Yeah.
mother, because it sets precedence for everything else. But when some women don't have that whole field or void field, oh my goodness, it can be so damaging internally because you feel that loss, you feel that lack of fullness and nurture. Like you said, you say you had an eating disorder. I remember that I always have this thing for sugar. I love pastries. I love to eat a lot of pastries and I love to just stuff my face with pastries. Then I read somewhere that, when you're eating sugar, when you're craving sugar, because I just get this craving for sugar. So it's not only pastries, it can be popcorn, it can be, fizzy drinks. I read that when you've lacked nurturing or you've lacked some form of nurturing, you seek comfort to comfort foods, aka sugar. And I was like, okay. I haven't like curbed my sugar habits, but the awareness was helpful because then you start to look at how you can give yourself that present of nurturing yourself, mothering yourself. Because at one point, you as a woman have to mother yourself. You have to give yourself what you are not able to be given. And I do like that you said that you have compassion for your mother and you are able to identify where she's coming from, but it's not enough for you to then be warped in that. You've made a choice to heal that so that you can be a better person to yourself and thus increase your self-love, which is the most important thing and self-esteem, which is one of the most
Yes.
important things that we need as women, self-esteem. And I know that women's relationships with their mothers determine their self-esteem. I know that for sure. Yeah.
Yes. And also, I firmly believe what you're saying about that relationship with food, because I believe a lot of people who are overweight, I don't think they have a food problem. I don't think they're really that hungry that they're overeating. I think they're overcompensating for whatever their emotional issues are.
I agree with you. I definitely do. I agree with you in that sense of whatever disorder we have can, if you look at the root cause, there's something that is linked to what we're lacking or what we feel
Yes.
like, yeah, or whatever we're stuffing down and not addressing. So that's interesting that it shows
Mm.
up in food. Yeah.
Yeah, and especially now that you think about it, because we've been talking out loud, obviously. And when I was talking about my experience, I specifically used the word starve in relation with food, and you use the word stuff in relation with food. But you can also do those things with love. You can be starved of love or stuff yourself to replace the love you're not getting.
Yeah. Very much so. And when I was like moving through life, it seemed like I was over loving but
Mm,
and then over watering dead plants. But I
yes.
just felt like my problem is I'm finding dead plants to water. Let me find the right soil to pour. Because there's no problem with how much I'm watering. It's just the soil. So those are the things, yeah.
Yeah, I did that too, over giving to all the wrong people.
And it's nice when you finally learn those boundaries. I feel like you feel extra lit up because then you feel, for me, I've always found boundaries to be sexy. So when you have that, when you make up in your mind that, okay, I'm putting up this boundary, I'm not giving to people that don't deserve it. When you see people that have that same energy of the past people and you put up those boundaries, you just feel so like, yeah, I'm that girl. Yes, I did it and I'm going to continue doing it. And then you find the right people to give that energy to and it works. Oh my goodness. It's the best feeling ever.
I totally agree, and that's why boundaries is one of the pillars of my coaching program, because first of all, boundaries are the highest form of self-respect. And if you respect yourself that much to set and enforce those boundaries, other people start respecting you as well. And to your point, like you start bringing in better people into your life.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
And
Now,
they are a
let's talk
huge
about.
confidence booster.
Yes, right? They really like elevate how you see yourself. And I think that that's what people that have been people pleasing in the past need. That beautiful introduction of boundaries. Yes, there's guilt because you've always felt like you can't say no. I started off in life like that. I was somebody that gave a lot and people took a lot from me. And I don't see myself as a victim because by growing self-esteem and self-confidence, I was like, oh my goodness, you guys had me in close vicinity and you didn't see my worth, or you saw my worth but you didn't feel like you could measure up, so you tried to like bring me down, and
Oh,
yet
yeah.
here I am shining, individually minding my business. And I'm like, gosh, I'm like such a great person. I genuinely enjoy being myself as a person. So it's kind of like, it's like payback for all the times in the past where I was people pleasing, because no, the best revenge is you coming back to yourself, knowing yourself, and then enhancing those things that people saw in you, and then really, really taking charge and embodying it. Because then it's like they knew, but now it's like they know, because back
Yeah.
then you didn't.
Yeah, and that's the power of confidence, right? Because now people know, like, they don't even get the chance to play me or it's not gonna work out well for them, and that's, like, such a powerful place to be, and not that
Right.
it should be, like, a power dynamic between people, but again, it's a respect thing. People, because I have self-respect, people respect me enough to not play me anymore.
Yes.
Most people.
Yes. And it's very, it's also like very, I don't know how to explain this. Energetically feels like you're padding yourself up more, because I used to feel like I was like very lean and withered energy wise. But like by having self respect and boundaries, like I was just putting up the padding to show that I'm actually a strong soldier, something like along those lines. That's how I feel. That's how I feel
Yeah.
energetically when I put up boundaries. Like I'm like, my security system is beefed up, like, whereas there was no security before.
Yeah, and also, I like how you use the word security because boundaries, because I never used to feel emotionally safe within myself, which again is why I was, like, reaching for external things, but
Okay.
boundaries increase your own personal emotional safety and
Yes.
potentially physical safety, depending on how weak your boundaries are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Gosh, I could go on and on about boundaries, but I truly love when a people pleaser starts to incorporate those things, and you see them build their identity up, build their self-respect. And I love when the people around them that are so used to taking from them hear that first no, or hear that first I'm never doing that again. Oh gosh, it's like the most enjoyable
Yeah.
experience to see or to experience by yourself. So yeah. Now, what does self-love actually look like day to day to you?
Day to day, so there's several things. One is boundaries. So we just talked about that, so I won't expand on that. Another one that we talked about a little bit earlier is intuition,
Mm,
because your intuition is you. So, like, there's all these people outside of yourself, there's social media, there's all these things that will try to tell you what's best for you, but only you know what's best for you. So to have that level of self trust is so important because nobody else, and it's okay to get other people's opinion, but you have to view it through a lens of discernment and always trust your inner knowing or trust your gut. Like, I have never heard of anyone who is like, oh, yeah, I made a really bad mistake by following my intuition. Have you ever heard anyone say that? Yeah, so
never.
you can never go wrong with that, and it just develops such a high level of self-trust. For me, it helped me to distinguish between, because I have a critical inner voice and I have my intuition, but I know the difference because my intuition is coming from such a loving place. Because even if the answer for my intuition is no, it's just no, it's not the right time. No, there's something better coming. It's not like my critical inner voice would say, like, no, you're like an idiot for even like asking that. You know what I mean? Like, that's your critical inner voice or ego if you're hearing words like that in your head, because your intuition is always like speaking to you in a loving, compassionate way, because it is you. So it's like that coming from that light on the inside. So it's really helped me to connect with myself and trust myself. Another huge part of self love on a day to day basis is, for me, it's doing one thing, at least one thing a day that brings me joy. So for me, that thing is surfing, because I am fortunate to live in a place where I can do that, because I love the ocean. I love nature. So it's just such a cleansing experience. But some days, like today, I don't think I have time to go surfing. So I'm just going to take a walk outside in nature and just do what I can to, relieve my stress and take care of myself. Sometimes it looks like dancing, because I love to dance. And even if you don't have a lot of time, like most songs these days are only like 3.5 minutes long. So the one thing that brings you joy doesn't have to like be this whole production or all consuming thing, but
Mm.
it's just a way to give back to yourself. And because there are things that we have to do on a day to day that aren't necessarily fun or that we want to do. So, like, injecting your day with something that brings you joy is something you can do for yourself in a very easy way.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. I totally agree with you. Now, you help women stop people pleasing and reclaim their boundaries. Can you talk about your experience with setting boundaries and the internal resistance that comes with it?
Yes. So, I am not going to sugarcoat things. If you have spent your life people pleasing, it's not easy to set boundaries, but I will tell you that it's worth it. And I think one of the hardest things about when people start setting boundaries, because I was like this too, like, you learn about them and then you're all like gung ho and confident, like, yes, I'm going to like start setting boundaries now. But the problem a lot of people run into, and I have ran into this myself, is that you set the boundary, but there are a lot of people who don't respect the boundary or try to test their limits, and then you have an opportunity to either enforce the boundary or be like, well, maybe this isn't what I really wanted to do. And so that is the hardest block to overcome, because trust me, you will be faced with not only setting the boundary, but having to reinforce it, because people
Enforce.
will take advantage of you. And it is hard and you do feel a lot of guilt. But and again, this goes back to just overall building the confidence and self love, because when you love yourself, you care way more about you than what anyone else thinks of you. And unless you're truly like doing someone wrong or harming someone else, you should never care more about what someone else thinks of you than what you think of yourself. And just to be clear, I am not the boundary master. I still make mistakes. For example, a few weeks ago, I went to a fashion show with one of my friends, and we were in line waiting to get in, and we had tickets. But I ran into a guy that I know who didn't have a ticket, and he immediately leached on to me and was like, "Hey, can I tag along with you guys to see if I can get in?" And my brain just froze. And I was like, "Okay." And long story short, he didn't end up getting in, but it was a good lesson for me, because in that moment, I was afraid of speaking up to him because I didn't want to hurt his feelings. But the truth is, it's not my problem. He didn't have a ticket, and I could have said that in an emotionally mature way, and I didn't, but it was a good learning opportunity for next time. So that's also to say, it's not about being perfect. It's about being on the journey and having a learning experience. But the takeaway from that was I made his comfort more important than mine. And that was like the main thing that I took away. Like, his comfort is not more important than mine, especially because he didn't proactively buy a ticket. So that's how I looked at it. I wasn't looking at it like, oh, I'm glad I didn't say anything and hurt his feelings, because that shouldn't be my priority. My priority is me.
Yes, that's a good example. Thank you for sharing that. And I think one thing that you said that stood out to me a lot, because obviously I've also been on this journey, is what you said about boundaries. Listeners, it's not just about setting that boundary. It's about enforcing it and pushing back. Because
Yes.
because I've been able to like meet a variety of characters, I've been able to identify the ones that when he set a boundary, they're so upset about it. Those are my favorite people, because then it's like, listen to Viv. Can you set this boundary and uphold it? And it's like, yes, show me. So I remember, I think I set a boundary with someone about them not contacting me a certain way, and they did that immediately after. And when they did that, all I did was not respond and continue talking to them through the other means of communication that
Yeah.
I provided as an alternative. I didn't address that, and I loved it. It can be so subtle. You enforcing your boundary. You don't need to speak and shout about it. What was the action? You said that this was the action, right? They shouldn't do this, and they did it. What's the consequence? That's how you enforce, right?
Yeah, I didn't mention that earlier, but you're absolutely right. Like, you have to state the consequence and stick to that consequence. And also, that's another form of self-respect, like
Mm-hmm.
staying true to your word. Like, I said this to you, and now I'm gonna follow through on it.
Yes. So good. Yeah. Yeah. And as we talk about this, this lights me up because I totally remember the whole journey of learning boundaries. I totally remember realizing that naturally I'm somebody that is very boundaried, and I'd been criticized to weaken my boundaries because it was clear as a child. I was very intuitive as a child. So I didn't like everybody liked. In fact,
Mm.
sometimes, a lot of times, the people that everybody really liked, I just side-eyed them like, I don't trust you. And I wouldn't say anything. I just wouldn't be as engaging. So along the way, growing up, people tried to say lots of things about how closed off I was to make it seem like I'm not friendly or I'm not inclusive, all of that. And I realized halfway through my 20s, I was like that the only reason why I've been having certain like relationships with people is because of these boundaries that have been criticized to be weakened. If not, I wouldn't have these people walking through. So what did I do? I reinforced those boundaries and I continued. And now, yeah, people do. If you ask certain people, they'll say I'm standoffish, I'm cold, I'm this and that. I'm okay with that because I want to make it clear that I'm just not for everyone.
I'm actually the same way, and I've been criticized for that before. And I do think there's a fine line because I was just having a conversation with someone the other day because she was asking me about what I do with clients who have too strong of boundaries. And I'm going to be honest, I like rarely meet people like that. So I've never had to coach anyone on that
Mm,
situation. But I know what
fair.
she's talking about. You can have too strong of boundaries, but this is how I look at it because I tend to have strong boundaries with people I don't know. And I do that for my own emotional and potentially physical safety. So if it's helping you feel safe and
That's important.
and there's no like dysfunction to it, because and you have to be self-aware enough to go through this and determine for yourself. I don't
Hmm.
see anything wrong with that because I used to follow this guy on Instagram. He is a coach and he coached males and females, and he talked about polarity a lot. And for women, he was like, "Oh, you need to like go out and about in the world and be more feminine and walk like this and do that." And in my mind, I was like, I don't think he realizes how unsafe it would be for a female to really do that in this world. It's not safe. And I hate to say that, but I'm not going out on the street and being all sexy and feminine because it's just not safe. So you have to use your own discretion when it comes to stuff like that.
So true, so true. And for me, I don't know, is there such a thing as being too boundaried, especially when it's about you being safe? Sometimes people think your gates are walls. You just have to find the handle. And I think a lot of people just read it as face value or as, oh, she's so closed up. No. I feel like the right people do end up crossing those
I
with
agree. And that's
ease.
why I'm like, I would rather be over boundary than not a
Thank
like
you.
yeah, but I think the conversation I had the other day, I think it was more in terms of I think some people, I don't know if this would be considered spiritually bypassing, but they cut off everyone they know because it's like, oh, they're not healthy for me. When the truth
Mm,
is, they're not willing to work on themselves and do the inner work because not everyone needs to be cut off. So she was talking about that kind of situation, but I think you're just talking more about, yeah, I'm protecting my own safety. And
yeah.
whether it's right or wrong, I agree with you.
Thank you. Exactly. Because I know that people pleasers, especially women, they've been exposed to a lot of danger as a result of having weak
Yes.
boundaries. So it's a no-brainer that when you become evolved, you have the strongest boundaries, tightest boundaries, because those things are not going to enter my land again. That's what it's like for me. That's why it feels like I'm fiercely protective over myself. I'd rather be that because I was supposed to be fiercely protected before and I didn't protect myself. So now I would do that times 10 because I'm making up for
Same.
lost time.
Especially when you're empathic, I think certain people tend to prey on you. So and that's why I believe in, like, I would way rather be over boundary than under boundary. Yeah.
Right. And, and then having to learn that on your own, that people will see your empathy and latch onto you and leech off of that and drain that, or people wanting to like be around you so that I can carry them. All of those things that boundaries can, it's like I now see certain people in terms of energy, like whether or not they're like parasites, you'll be able to tell because they don't want to let go. You're like their
Yes.
supply. So it's all
Yes.
about energy and intuition. Yeah. Because my intuition is very, I don't like this person. Let's keep moving.
Same. And I've been noticing lately, because I've been trying, because you probably go through this too. Like, you have an interaction with someone, and during and even after, you just have like an uneasy feeling about it. And then, but I've been having this experience lately where the reason becomes apparent like pretty soon afterwards. And which again, like, which is why you should always listen to your intuition, because even if it doesn't make sense at the time, there is probably a reason for it. So always trust your gut around people, because that's another
Right?
way to protect yourself, right? Because if you're around someone and you're like, man, I get a really weird feeling about this person, it's probably a good sign to protect yourself from them, whether
Yes,
you
thank you.
are aware of the reason in that
Or
moment or
not.
not.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Because, like for me as a child or as somebody that has known particular people for a long period of time, in terms of like adults or society members, I still don't get a good feeling around them. And yet the thing hasn't been revealed just yet. I'm still waiting. But it's like I die on this hill because I trust my
Yeah.
intuition. It's like I don't care how long it takes for that to be revealed. I know that I'm on the right side because it's like a smell for me now.
Yes.
Right? And it's like, no, I don't care if it looks like I'm crazy or I'm the one that is like isolated or anything. I trust it. I trust the vibe. I trust my intuition. I trust how I feel. I trust I don't feel safe. I'm not trying to see why I shouldn't feel safe.
Yeah. And I love how our conversation is naturally tying boundaries and intuition into safety, because I feel like a reason why a lot of people like people please and give to external things is because you want that safety in something else, but nothing is ever going to give you the safety that you have on your own. And the best part is you can control that too. What we're talking about, like, you are enforcing the boundaries, you are connecting to your intuition, and no one can ever take that stuff away from you. And that's the stuff that builds your confidence and self-love, like knowing that you're responsible for your own life and you can handle it and handle it well.
Yes. Oh my goodness. And you'll be so surprised the way you see that people preferred you not having boundaries. You'll be so surprised the way you'd realize how and why boundaries are so important because the way they protect you from being used, taken advantage of, being disrespected. Oh my goodness. So amazing. I love boundaries. And I think, yes, there's something I wanted to share. Like, if we're talking about like stories, I remember there's a particular person that who I was in close proximity to frequently that I just couldn't shake this itch that there was something odd. And the person presents himself like how an upstanding citizen would, you know the story. I
Yeah.
just kept feeling like, ugh, like it was like my spirit was shaking me like, oh, I was like, wow, like nothing has happened, but I trust you. I'm just going to keep an eye out. Very unexpectedly, the revelation just occurred. And I was like, wow. I saw it, I clocked it, I'm ready. I'm happy that I trusted my intuition. You know that feeling? I trust it. So I don't care because people think I'm like a whistleblower. I don't I don't care if I don't care if it looks like I'm the odd one out. I see, I feel, I trust my intuition, and I don't mind that it's 10,000 people against me. I trust what I'm seeing, and eventually it's going to show itself. I don't care how long it is. I've waited years for different things to show up. They haven't shown up yet, but I trust it.
And that's another thing, building confidence helps you to not be afraid to go against the grain, which I think is so important in today's society because we have a lot of herd mentality things going on, and a lot of it is political, but you also see it on social media or whatever, where everyone's following a trend or following a certain thing. Even the way a lot of people are getting all the same like facial fillers and stuff, which is I won't even like give my opinions on any of this stuff. But anyway, like there's just such a mentality. So there's so much power in trusting yourself and respecting yourself so much that you're not afraid to go against the grain and march to the beat of your own drum.
So true. I totally agree. And I love why you said that confidence enables you to be able to stand against or stand by yourself. It's so important because I think that everybody has a different life journey. Sometimes people have this journey of being a leader. And sometimes to be a leader means being able to stand on your own mindset or own view and, rule against the people that may be opposing that. So everybody has a journey. I just see everything that happens in this way, in this journey as lessons for the bigger picture.
Yeah. And also, I was having a conversation with a friend recently because we were talking. It actually started with hot air balloons because we were like, how do people invent this stuff? Like, who comes up with this idea? And then the conversation turned to airplanes. And, the Wright brothers, they were like the forerunners in that space. And I
Mm-hmm.
made the comment to her, I was like, I guarantee most people who knew the Wright brothers probably thought they were lunatics, right? Because they're like doing this thing that's like so off the beaten path and no one had ever heard of. But they ended up like, look what air travel is to this day. Like, it ended up being genius. So sometimes
Right.
the off the beaten path people are really on the right track. It just doesn't look like it.
Yes. It does. It doesn't. And that's why I love inventors because you have to be a little bit mad or crazy to
Yeah.
think outside of what everyone else has been doing. Imagine testing an aeroplane, like you're putting your life at risk at that time where, they were using bicycles at first attached to
Yeah.
wings and all of that. Like, but they were willing to, like,
And they got made fun of in their neighborhood.
yes. Yes. So it's super crazy. Even with this podcast, like it's so funny. I use intuition with my art. And I was just sitting one day, it was a very random day, and all of a sudden it just like a message just came into my chest. And I was like, start a podcast. I'm like, start a podcast, really? But because I've done art and I've had my intuition act like this for that project, I was like, okay, and when my intuition speaks when it comes to my art, I listen. Like there's no questioning the way I would question in real life, which is something I'm trying to practice or transfer. So when it said start a podcast, I was like, this was 2021, by the way. I was like, okay, start a podcast. I guess I have to start a podcast then. I'm just going to wait and see what um equipment I need, what app I can use. I needed this to be easy because if I'm doing something, it needs to be in flow. I don't need to be stressing to do it. Okay. So I got all the information and then I just launched August 2021. To tell you that I didn't see myself now, podcasting has really taken off, right?
Yeah.
It shocks me. I'm not saying that I didn't see the future of podcasting, but I wasn't thinking about the future of podcasting. I was just thinking about the future of my platform.
Hmm.
So being in this space where podcasting has just taken off and now everybody's like, oh, I want to start a podcast. I want to start a podcast. I have a podcast. I'm like, I feel so proud that I listened, that I'm 4 seasons ahead of who,
Right.
right? Like I have a body of work. Like I'm not just starting in this wave of people that have now seen that this is a thing. Okay, let's hop on it. Like, and I don't see anything wrong with that, but I've never been that kind of person. I've always been a front runner person. So
Yeah.
I like to be in places that are not saturated yet. So, and I don't think podcasting is saturated, but I like to be at the beginning. So when I
Hmm.
first started, I wasn't thinking anything of it. Even with Podmatch wasn't even giving as much money as they are now. So everyone was just starting. You know what I'm saying? But like now, this is 2025. Podmatch is paying more. One. Two, my podcast is on season 4. We have 150 episodes.
Wow.
I'm just like, what the heck? I didn't see this coming. So
Yeah.
my point, yeah,
Oh, go
my
ahead.
point is
Well,
that
what is your point?
intuition, and my point is that intuition, so important, worth it, worth listening, worth taking the risk, especially when you don't know what is going to come from it.
Yeah, and that's a good story because that's how I started my coaching business. I was in a corporate job, it was super toxic. One day after work, I went on a hike because I was just so stressed out, and I was like, "I just need to be in nature." So I was on this hike, and my intuition, loud and clear, was like, "Start a coaching business." And I was like, "Nah." But, like, as I continued the hike, like, the feeling, like, it lit the shine inside, like, the shine that I was talking about you have when you're a
Yeah.
kid, it, like, lit that up. So then after that day, I couldn't stop thinking about it, and that's how I started my coaching business, and it feel I don't know, I know it feels weird, but you don't always have to know all the answers because your intuition would never lie to you. Because I still don't have all the answers on why I'm on this path, but I trust that it will come in time.
Thank you for sharing that. Honestly, I love that we're really, really vibing on this intuition topic because it's so important. And literally, by us having this conversation and going back and forth, I know that listeners would really understand the whole importance of that being part of our core foundation as people and as women, because it's our compass, it's our direction, it's it's everything. It's
Yeah,
headquarters.
and I love how we organically talked about boundaries and intuitions, and those are the 2 core pillars of my coaching program. So
I love that.
and see,
Alignment.
and this is how intuition works though, I think, because I think
Yeah.
we're just, like, playing off each other's vibe.
Yes, we are, because I've not asked any structured question this whole time. I've just been going off of my head and the vibe. So yeah, you're right. So let's go back to the questions as we wrap this up. Now, in your book and work, you talk about choosing being over performing. What's the difference? And how can we begin to notice when we're performing for others?
So performing comes from seeking external validation because when you are people pleasing, or for instance, I came from corporate America where you're encouraged to always achieve and do more and put more time in. The result of those things are for external things, whether it's for someone to like you, whether it's for the raise, the title, whatever. But when you are just being and the essence of who you are, and this is why I call my program Shine from the Inside, because it's like you have a light inside of you, right? And it's like the sun. So the sun, it's just there shining. So when the sun is inside us, our light, we're happy and fulfilled regardless of anything going out on outside of us. Not only that, you're inspiring people in your immediate surroundings because it uplifts them, makes them happier, inspires them to also shine their light. And then also, it's like you're either contributing to raising the vibration of the universe or getting caught up in the fear and anger. So then you're also contributing to raising the vibration of the entire universe. So basically, like, your happiness and all the stuff you're looking for outside of yourself, it's really within you, and all you have to do is be you to reap all of those benefits of being the sun inside of you.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that, honestly, because I think the whole concept of following what lights you up is the basis of authenticity and living
Yeah.
life in alignment. So thank you for sharing that and breaking that down. Very nice. Now, what small practices or mindsets can one practice to stay rooted in their truth, especially when they feel this pressure to overperform?
So I'll go back to boundaries and intuition because when you have certain practices in place, and I say practice because, again, I will never claim to be a master at boundaries or intuition because it's a journey, but I've come a really long way. But the practice of doing those things in my day to day life, or the practice of doing one thing a day that brings me joy, that gives me confidence. And so honestly, just practicing respecting yourself and trusting yourself and not giving any that away to something outside of yourself. And again, there's nothing wrong with asking for people's opinion, but you have to put it through the lens of discernment. So it also takes a huge level of self-awareness. Like, am I doing this for me because it's good for me? It's part of my path. It's making me happy. Or am I doing it for something outside of myself because I want validation or I want this and that? So it takes a huge level of self awareness, but it's a practice. And that's why I keep intentionally using the word practice, because if you practice these things and practice being a certain way, then that just becomes part of your life and you don't even have to think about it anymore. Like, for example, intuition. I'm at the point where I don't even have to like try to tap into my intuition. Because when I first started, I would have blocked out time every day where I would sit down and it's like, okay, now I'm going to tap into my intuition and take notes and blah blah blah, and that, but now it's just like a constant stream of things coming in. It's not something I have to even try to do. It's just more of a way of being.
Thank you so much for that. I think that's a perfect place to stop.
Okay.
This conversation has been wonderful. Everything was just like needed because of I'm a former people pleaser. So it was very much rooted in this is how you've healed and this is how you can continue to help other people to heal. I love that we were bouncing off of each other's vibes. That was really,
Yeah.
really cool. Now, listeners, thank you for tuning into this deep and honest conversation with Angie Hawkins. If anything today stirred your heart, whether it's the mother wound, the weight of people pleasing, or the journey from performance to presence, know that healing is possible and you don't have to earn your worth. To dive deeper into Angie's work or grab her beautiful memoir, Running in Slippers, visit runninginslippers.com. You'll also find coaching support, self-love resources, and next steps to begin reclaiming your joy from the inside out. And if you're exploring your own path of authenticity and healing, I'd love to walk beside you too. You can book me for a tarot reading on Perspective with Faith on all social media platforms. Until next time, may you choose being over performing and love over approval, one honest breath at a time. Thank you. And thank you, Angie.
Thank you.